Hello there, guys, and welcome to the Derek Tafuma Show. This is the show that we try to produce generic content on each platform. So I've got a number of podcasts where I'm posting my content. I have other social media platforms where I'm posting content. And what I try to do is to produce generic content on each of the platforms. So this is just for Facebook. This content is not going anywhere else. It's not going to some podcast. It's not going to Facebook. It's staying here within YouTube. So this is the Derek Tafuma Show, or YouTube Live, or live on YouTube. And today's live show is based on some of the content of the blog post which I wrote this morning. And so the blog post was about building a brand, an individual brand or a personal brand, or even an organizational or corporate brand. So a brand is just something that follows you or that you leave on the table. So the brand is what you leave on the table when you leave the room. So if you've been in a room and you leave the room, what do the people in the room say about you? What do they say about a product? When people finish eating a food item that you make, what is their impression after? Do they want to come back and buy that food again or not? What is their impression when they buy a pair of shoes from you? Do they want to buy that pair of shoes again or not? What is their impression when you use a smartphone device which you have manufactured? Do they want to keep on buying from you? Do they want the next version, or they move off to another manufacturer? So that is your brand. Your brand is basically something that you build so that when you leave the room, or when you're not there, or when your product is being consumed, what impression does it give to the people that are consuming it? And so what can you do in this day and age with social media, or with new media, as I like to call it? I like to avoid the word social media, because I think it has evolved from being just some social thing, okay, to a serious platform where you can build brands, where you can sell products, where you can run businesses, where you can build relationships. So there's a lot now going on the new media. In fact, the ultimate thing that you can do now with new media is that you can actually run a media company. Okay, you can start and operate a media company straight away, because you've got everything you need. I mean, there's three ways in which we can communicate on these platforms, starting with blogging. Blogging is basically you just writing an article, like I do every morning, 1,000 words. So when I write those 1,000 words and put them into a WordPress website, I am blogging, okay? And so that is why you'll find that I will put the exact same 1,000 words will go into my Facebook wall post. It'll go onto my Facebook page post. It'll go onto my Facebook group post. So it'll also go onto medium.com, okay, as a blog post. It'll also go onto Google Plus as a blog post. And I'll add a picture just to give some context as to what the blog post is all about. So that's the blogging bit of it. Then you've got the podcasting bit, where you are basically running a radio station. Basically what you're doing is you're producing audio content, and the audio content can be broadcast on many different podcasting platforms, like Apple's podcasts, like Stitcher.com, like there's another one that I just discovered recently. I think it's The application comes off as Cast on the App Store, but I think it's Pocket. Yes, it's Pocket Cast. So Pocket Cast is one of those platforms which has also come up, which where you can post your podcasts. Then we have SoundCloud. So SoundCloud is another place where you can post your podcasts. Okay, so that's SoundCloud. Then, so those are the places where you can use your voice. And then we move on to the third way of communicating. So we looked at blogging as one of them, which is basically you owning a digital newspaper, basically. Then there's podcasting, which is basically you owning a radio station. Then there's vlogging, which is basically you owning a television station. So in blogging, podcasting, and vlogging, basically you own a newspaper, a radio station, and a television station. Okay, so you are the author, you are the radio host, and you are the actor all at the same time. If you do all three, now some people prefer to just do the blogging part, some people prefer to do blogging and podcasting, they prefer both. Some people like blogging, podcasting, and vlogging. Some people just like one, either they are vlogging or podcasting or blogging. I'm one of those people that like to do all three. So I'm blogging, and then I use the content of my blog to produce a podcast, which I've already done using GarageBand. Blogging, I'm using WordPress and Medium, and I'm using Facebook, and I'm using Google Plus. As for podcasting, I'm using Stitcher. Well, I haven't started using Stitcher, but I'm hoping to use Stitcher as soon as possible. So basically I'm using SoundCloud. I'm using Anchor.fm, which converts the Anchor wave into a podcast, which then posts it onto the Apple Store. So that's the podcasting. Then for vlogging, I'm using my Facebook page, my Facebook wall, my Facebook group to do live videos. I'm also using other platforms or other applications rather, such as Apple's own I think it's called Clips. I use Clips. I use any video shooting application, and then I just put it, maybe I put it onto any of the social media platforms like Facebook, for example. But here's the thing, if I try to produce videos outside of the actual platforms or social media platforms, it gives me an extra job to then transfer it later on onto the social media platforms. So it's easier if I can just record within the application. But the advantage of using another application for doing that is that the other application has more editing functions. Okay, that's why it's an advantage. But I think if you're up and about, there's no point in being too romantic about how you're producing the content, because what the people want to hear or what the people want to see is just the content, it's the stories, what you're talking about. Then I think in vlogging, besides using YouTube, and I think YouTube is the main one, but you've got applications which are taking YouTube live videos or taking live videos and posting them onto YouTube. And then obviously you can also, I talked about how you can go into Facebook, your Facebook page group or your Facebook wall, and basically shoot a live video within there, or upload a video that you've already shot on a different platform. But you also have Twitter with the Periscope application. And what Twitter has done after buying Periscope, they have taken the application and embedded it within Twitter itself. So you can basically start a live show within Twitter, and then it takes you to the Periscope application. Okay guys, it's been almost 11 minutes, and I think I'm about to just wrap this up for today. So we talked about how you have to build a brand using new media, not social, but new media, which is just another, I think it's more descriptive for me to say it's a new media rather than call it social media. Okay, so there's blogging, podcasting, and blogging, which is basically your newspaper, your radio station, and your television station. But here's the trick, okay, of producing content, which is, and for me, the best way to produce content is to document or to record what you do. So record what you do. In fact, when you're recording, talk about what you know. Okay, avoid talking about stuff you don't know. There's a lot of stuff I know, which I'm going to talk about, but there's also a lot of stuff I don't know, which means I might have to, if I was going to make a video on a certain subject, say something to do with maybe let's see, something I don't know, maybe coding. Okay, if I was to make a video on coding, which if I wanted to, I could start learning it. But if I was to make a video right now about coding, if I cannot put the coding into context and avoid talking about the technical aspects of coding, then people are going to realize I don't know what I'm talking about. But if I talk about coding, and I talk about it in terms of how it impacts on the things that I know, then that's a different conversation altogether. Okay, so it's important to talk about what you know, but it's also important to talk about what you actually do, because it's different what you know and what you actually do, because people are judging your credibility on issues that you talk about. You can be very knowledgeable on certain aspects, even if you don't practice, you don't do them. It's like a professor of engineering who has never worked at an engineering plant, but he knows every technical aspect of engineering because that's what he's been teaching for decades. Okay, so he knows what he's talking about. Then you can also talk about what you actually do. So a professor who has never been an engineer but talks about engineering can talk about how he teaches engineering, and can also talk about aspects of engineering which are theoretical but not necessarily practical. So talk about what you know, but also talk about what you actually do, because that's going to give you some credibility. So you can't talk about things that have to be done, but you haven't actually done them. So when I talk about blogging, podcasting, and vlogging, that's because I actually do them. Those are things I actually do. When I talk about physics, that's because I've actually been in the physics field as an educator for the past 18 to 20 years, because I can also count the number of the years that I was practicing as a practitioner before graduating. So I could say 20 years. Then if you take into account the high school years, that's 26 years. Okay, so I could safely say, if you consider some part of the primary years, for the past 30 years, okay, I've been in the field of education, in the field of learning and teaching, in the physics field. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about when I talk about physics. Okay, and then also talk about how you do what you do. So the how of things, for example, I made a video about an application called Notability. Notability is a writing application, note-taking application, which is on iPad, on iPhone, and on iMac. And I talked about how I use it. Okay, I didn't talk about how it should be used, because most of these platforms, most of these applications, sort of, people use them differently. Okay, people never use them exactly the same way. Some people do, but a lot of the times, if we take 10 people using the same application, they'll come up with completely different ways of using it. Some will focus on certain aspects of it, some will not. So when I talk about how I do what I do, I talk about, for example, how I use the Notability app instead of how it should be used. Because if I'm going to talk about how it should be used, then I probably need to leave that to the manufacturer, to the person who's made it, to the team that have made the application, because they know exactly how they want it to be used. But it also turns out that sometimes that team is unable to predict exactly how some users are going to use the application. There is always going to be a new innovation, something which helps. That feedback is going to help those guys, the developers, to come up with a better product. Okay, so let me just wrap this up now. So I've been talking about building a brand with new media, an individual brand, a personal brand. I also talked about blogging, podcasting, and vlogging, which is basically your newspaper, radio station, and television station, and there are different apps for doing that. And then I talked about the need to talk about what you know, what you do, and how you do what you do. Okay, so thank you guys for listening. If it's your first time listening to me, there is a lot of videos I've made in the past which you can go back to and watch on my channel. You can subscribe to it so that you get regular updates. If you click on the little bell, you'll get updates every time I post a new video. Now there's probably going to be 4 or 5 pieces of video coming from me on a daily basis, because I intend to use other applications like Livestream, Ustream, Live as Solo, I think Wirecast Go, that's the 4th one already, and obviously the YouTube application itself, so that's 5. That's gonna make 5 videos. The only reason I'm doing this is because I want to try and get used to all of these apps so I can talk about them, because that's the other thing I do. I've got so many applications on my gadgets and I like to talk about them, and so I'm going to be making depending on where I am. And number 6, using the Mac, I'm going to be doing a screen cast using ScreenFlow. So already that's about 6 different videos coming through to YouTube. Okay, so you can expect a lot of content coming out from this end. So once again, I want to thank you for listening. Please subscribe, please comment, please like and share. If you find something interesting, then the only logical thing is to share it. Okay, if you think there is improvements needed to be done, go ahead and put a thumbs down. Okay, I'm not one of those people that get discouraged because or gets upset because someone has put a thumbs down. I think it's important to express exactly what you think about the video, so that it helps me to make better videos in the future. So once again, thank you for watching.